this is very unlikely to happen, basically. That all the mediums would be basically above 50%. There should be as many below 50% as above 50%. So this is a strong result. And this is the brainwave we observed. So this is the presentation of the image. And this is what we call the evoke response. So what happens in the brain when we present the image. And what we see is that when they were incorrect, the brainwave was significantly different than when they were correct. And so this was over this brain region. You can see this is the nose of the subject, and this is the average across the 12 subjects. So this was over this parietal, visual parietal region, which makes sense for this very early potential. And the fact that it's very early here before 0.1 second, basically at about 0.1 second, means that if this effect is reproducible, it's a very early process, very intuitive early process. It's not something that appears late in the processing of the image. Again, we published these results in a mainstream journal, Frontier in Psychology and Explore, and they got wide attention. And so these results, of course, one study doesn't show anything. So these results would need to be reproduced by other laboratories, which is why right now we're trying to post our code so other people can reproduce these experiments in their lab to show that, yeah, these experiments are reproducible. This is what science is about. You want to show that if you were to redo the same experiment, you'll get the same result. And because it is so controversial in the mainstream science that these effects exist, we need to be reproduced by many laboratories until we can convince people that these effects are real. And again, this is the tip of the iceberg. And I like to compare this with, this is an ancient vase, I think from Greece or Egypt. And then you can see electric fish here. So they knew electricity like thousands of years ago. But, you know, it was just a curiosity. And so it's kind of the same here for this kind of effect. You know, at our stage, we're in the prehistory, basically, of these extended mind capacities. And, you know, it's just a curiosity. Curiosity is not part of the mainstream science yet. And so I want to thank you for your attention, and I wish you a good rest of the conference.
So keeping in mind the context from the earlier session and this session and what we have heard Dr. Anand sharing, we have with us Shraddhalu, who is moderating the session. And I'm going to invite Deepeshwar, Dr. Deepeshwar, who's come here from SVASA. SVASA is an organization committed to studying yoga across all aspects. I've had the benefit of being a student for PhD out over there. So it's a privilege to have you here. That connection has come alive. And we have Seema here, and Seema has kindly stepped in to come in for today's session. So Seema, I'm going to invite you to give us a one-liner, two-liner about you so the audience can connect. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. This theme is on the relationship of mind and matter, and in particular the relationship between the brain and consciousness, as already we have had one aspect of this discussion covered in by Arnaud. I think the battery's finished. I'll just take this. This one aspect was covered by Arnaud Delorme, which is about sensitivity that we already have towards magnetic fields. The fact that the life cycles in the human body, and in this case the menstrual cycle, is actually linked to the lunar cycles. And it's not really a question of lunar light. It has to do something with deeper energy shifts which are not entirely physical. And therefore they do not know the mechanism. Astrology taps into this knowledge, but again, there's no explanation for it. It is very significant that Arnaud pointed out that we still don't know the mechanism. Heart rhythms related to the sun and sunspots. You cannot conceive of any mechanism except some electromagnetic fields of the earth, but that should affect the whole of your body. Why just the heart rhythm? Interestingly, astrology catches this link and says the heart is linked to the sun. So there are insights from our traditions which go very deep, which science is confirming through these observations, but we still don't have a link. We still don't know the mechanism of how this works. And perhaps in today's discussions, we will explore some of this relationship. The theme of mediumship, though, suggests that the human being is able to perceive realities which are well beyond the physical senses, consciously. That some of us have it more developed, others have it less, but that in principle all of us have actually a deeper, inner, even a higher life of which we are unconscious, or rather it is subliminal. It is conscious of us, we are not conscious of it. So we will begin with Dr. Deepeshwar's presentation. He comes from he's Deputy Director of Research from S. Vyasa. And interestingly, I mentioned S. Vyasa earlier in my discussion. In India, S. Vyasa is the equivalent of Institute of Noetic Sciences in the United States. It has become, in fact, the leading center for this kind of research, linking consciousness states with material and especially yogic knowledges and processes. And Dr. Deepeshwar is one of the examples of S. Vyasa's successes. He was a student there, did his PhD there, and now is a senior research scientist within the same institution. And this is very important because we have to build a whole generation of researchers who are free from the old model and can actually enter into the new model with full freedom of mind.
Yeah. Om Guru Bhyo Namaha. Thank you, Shalaluji, for giving a beautiful description about S. Vyasa activities. As this entire session is going to talk about how this mind, matter, mind, and brain is connected. So when we look at the concept which is given by Sri Aurobindo, he has mentioned about involution process and evolution process. So all involution started with the randomness, chaotic nature. How this chaotic nature come into the concrete and develop a matter, the Prithvi Tattva. And similarly, from that matter, how slowly the mind, which is part of the human system, which is, nobody knows where it is existing. A lot of science talking about mind is somewhere in the brain, but still it is not very clear. And so far we are trying to understand what is the nature of mind. The nature is little bit duality is there. People are talking about mind is a random nature. But I feel that what scriptures talk about, what entire yoga philosophy talks about, to slow down the mind. So nature of the mind could be a relaxation, a kind of calmful or peaceful state which getting disturbed, which is getting, I would say, fickle state because of our internal conflict, because of our desire and wishes. And these wishes are trying to take our mind in different directions. If you look at the concept in Bhagavad Gita, it is wonderfully defined in second chapter. Dhyayato vishyana punsa sangasteshu pajayate Sangat sanjayate kamha, kamhat krodho bijayate. It means mind is when it is getting attached with any kind of desire or object, mind is trying to get it that object. That's of creating a chaotic nature in the mind. That's bring a state of randomness. When mind is random state, you are losing, you are dissipating a lot of energy, which supposed to be go in a positive direction, in a constructive manner, but because of the chaotic nature, we're losing a lot of energy. That's what after a stressful condition, we feel tired, lethargic, and we feel a disturbed state. So how this desire bring into the disturbed state of intellectual? So it is a process which is given in Bhagavad Gita. So dhyayato vishyanamasa, whenever we run behind any object, it creates a lot of anger, it creates a lot of infatuation. And if it is not fulfilled, then we are end up with the state of angerness. We are getting angry because something is not achieved or we could not able to get it. And then slowly we are moving from that state to the state of conflict where we lose our mental balance. So, Krodhata bhavati sammoha, next shloka, when we get the anger, it creates more infatuation towards the object. And that infatuation brings us the delusion. Krodhata bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibrama. It means our intellectual, our confidence, our entire process of mental functioning getting disturbed. There the affliction start, which is given in Patanjali Sutra, Pramana Viparya Vikalpa Nidra Smriti. These mental modifications, they are bringing the state of klishta, where we are feeling the painful state of. So this mental fluctuation, this kind of imbalanced state of mind, delusion state of mind, bring Krodhati bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibrama, smriti bhranshad buddhi nasho. It means once we cannot take our right decision, because mind is got disturbed, mind is in random state, it cannot make decision, and because of poor decision we destroy our identity. And that's what is happening. Today, what we don't have, we have a fastest communication technology, fastest transportation, best engineering skills, best technological development, best method of diagnosis of the disease. But the question is same. Are we happy? Are we healthy? That's the biggest question, which is, I think everyone wants the answer about this. So by looking at the object, we think that we are going to get happiness. I think it's a very much physical happiness, which is very much short duration happiness, temporary happiness, which can be get delusioned, which can be getting demolished after for some time. So we are still running behind how we can understand this kind of desire, how we can solve it out. So the answer is not given in the current scenario, it is given in ancient scriptures. If you look at Vedas, Upanishad, if you look at the literature, Shastras, which is having abundant knowledge about our entire yoga philosophy, they never talk about any kind of disease condition. They always talk about how to reduce the mental fluctuation, how to bring the calmness state of mind. The entire philosophy of yoga is talking about how to control the mind. All kind of chitta, which is getting affected because of our desire, because of our ambition, because of our so many we think want to achieve. Because of that, we are getting disturbed state. And now we are trying to understand how this yoga practice. So what yoga does? Yoga is not only working at the mental level, it is somehow bringing changes at the physiological level, including the brain functions. We have done series of studies in our research lab that is known as Anveshana. And the vision of S. Vyasa is something, the combined best of the East with their best of the West. It means the Eastern knowledge should be standardized, should be taken forward with the help of technological development. So technology is not at all bad. It is good for us, all of us. Yes.
You had done special research in this field particularly on the effect of meditation on the brain and brain processes. Could you share
Yes,
some
so,
of your explorations?
so I'm going towards that side. So how these mental fluctuations can be studied in the laboratory conditions. So we did, even my doctoral work was understanding how this random thinking state, chanchala state, are affecting our sensory process. So we used evoked potential, which is measuring electrical activities of the brain to a given stimulus in time-logged fashion. So we have given auditory stimulus to understand different mental states. Every individual in the entire lifetime is spending in 4 different mental states. One is known as random thinking, chanchalata. Second is known as ekagrata, concentrative state of mind. Third is known as focused state of mind, that is known as dharana state. And last is known as effortless meditative state, dhyana state. So chanchalata, ekagrata, dharana and dhyana. These 4 mental states are influencing our sensory process, all kinds of behavior which is getting affected because of these processes. So what we observed, we assess the entire neural axis. Start from the brainstem, looking at the different neural generators which are processing information in these different phases of mental level. We looked at the midbrain, looking at the middle latency auditory evoked potential, and then moved towards the long latency auditory evoked potential, which is the neural generator associated with cerebral cortex. And further, we looked at how these different mental processes are influencing our attentional activities, any kind of focused activities when we are trying to perform any task. What we observed interestingly, we observed when people are in effortless meditative state, the heartbeat starts with the autonomic functions. The heartbeat comes down, whereas in previous states like dharana, ekagrata or chanchalta, we observed the heartbeat was higher. Focused meditation, meditation is not a focused process again. It is an effortless process when you are get into the state of meditation from some kind of focusing on these syllables or DT or something. So we have observed when people are in meditative state, there are subsystems in the brain. Some are neural generators which are associated with the sensory process to process and taking to the next level of the brain to decide whether it is good or bad. What we observed, there are some neural generators which are getting switched off at the medial geniculate gyrus, which is one of the neural generator. We have looked at inferior collicular level, which is getting switched off when people are get into the state of meditation. They can voluntarily cut off any sensory process which are disturbing to them. So this such kind of potentials we observed in meditation. And also, once it is getting filtered or switching off or unnecessary information when they are getting stopped at the lower level till the midbrain, after we have observed the information processing speed was better. It means more number of neurons we have observed to come together to process the information. So we observed the neural recruitment was improved in meditative state. That's what people are feeling more focused, more attentive. They could able to perform tasks better with limited time. And we also observed the efficiency of the neuron was getting better with the process of meditation, which is no other medicine can give you. No other method, no other process can provide you. So meditation is developing such kind of efficiency potentials within us to process the information as at our will.
So very interesting observations that when you actually choose to make your mind quiet, within the brain we can watch parts of the brain shutting down and switching off. And the question we could ask is the mind change that you are making affecting the brain, or are you brain switching off parts which leads you into a state of quietness of mind that you call meditation? And how would you respond to that?
Okay, so actually brain is just an instrument. As it was mentioned since morning, we have looked at Dean Radin lecture, and then Shraddhaluji has spoken about mind is take information or process things, whether it is internally or externally. It takes information and creating a changes in the brain level. So brain is getting influenced because of mind is making that influence.
So do you see evidence that the mind is independent of the brain?
Exactly. So what we have done, we have assessed these 4 mental state, looking at the visual analog scale. Visual analog scale, something which is talking about subjective experience or subjective, when people were more focused or more get into this state of meditation in 10 centimeter scale, how much they felt, and we observed the subjective experience was better, and we looked at the amplitude, which is suggesting the neural efficiency or recruitment was higher in people who responded well in meditative state than the non-meditators.
So here's the second most interesting observation here, which is that actually your mind's efficiency improves when you're in a meditative state, and which is seen in the efficiency of the brain, or rather the lack of the brain struggling to keep up. You see, what it suggests is that the mind freed from the brain is more effective. Mind bound into brain and brain restlessness is less effective. It's a very interesting insight which we have from the yoga tradition also, but this is confirmed by your research.
Yes.
Fascinating. I'd like to now invite Seema Rama to share some of her work. Seema has been working as a behavioral scientist, first with the CDC, that's the famous
it's a Centers for Disease Control
Center for
and
Disease
Prevention.
Control, which has been very much in the news during the pandemic and after, as the authority for many of these things. But she's been working with them, and then interestingly, she has shifted with the same kind of work, though, but on a very different scale and focus, with Northrop Grumman, which is one of the world's biggest arms industries, and they're studying human behavior. And we have to understand why. Sorry, that's just to spice up the commentaries she's going to share of her work with them. And her work particularly has been on how the environment influences our behavior and the nuances of these connections.
Yes. So, as Shraddalaji mentioned, my background is kind of varied, and I've touched a bit upon many different angles in life, just because I've always been curious, number one. Number two, I found these different roles that I have assumed has truly awakened as well as developed the different aspects within me. And Mother's symbol, has the 12 aspects. I find that to be my core value system throughout, since I was a child, and I've tried to practice it. And through those practices, I found, whether professionally or personally, with my family, with my relationships, with my friends, it's really helped in implementing, those core values. And for CDC, for example, I can give you some of those examples that I can share. Certain things I cannot share because of confidentiality, but in CDC, some of the laboratory work that we did, there was a lot of science involved, obviously, lab work, biologically, physics, all of that, chemistry. But I found that a lot of the spirituality, a lot of the things that were happening were connected to the energy and the vibration of the laboratory scientists that were working there. And I saw it. A few people that were, I guess, also spiritually connected saw it. And I'll just share those, experiences. I wasn't prepared, sorry, for an actual speech here today, but I'll share those experiences. There were a few people there that were very, I would say religious, very peaceful by nature, and behaviorally very calm. And there were other scientists that were extremely agitated all the time. They're chaotic, their nature was extremely angry, or, hard to work with, difficult to work with, quote unquote. So those folks, whenever the difficult people would come into the the laboratory, and would experiment, would have those, the petri dishes that they would put their cells into, and things like that, they would always have issues. Their statistics were always wrong. They were skewed, and their papers were extremely controversial, chaotic. Many of them would fight amongst each other, and their results were very they're misinterpreted and misaligned with the true fact, the true biology of nature. Some of those things, again, I can't speak about. So, but the laboratory scientists that were very peaceful and quiet and, spiritually inclined, so to speak, they would come in, they would, do their experiments, and wow, voila. Like some of those things that we talked about today, that's exactly what happened. But unfortunately, like Shraddhalu had mentioned earlier, it's not respected. Those scientific evidence things that I saw, that was science to me, they did not recognize it. And they just said, well, that's just science. Sometimes the results are this way and sometimes the results are that way. But it was consistent in my experience. Over 100 experiments I've done, and out of all of them, consistent 100%, I saw the attitude of the scientist mattered. So as such, throughout my life, I've noticed, like behaviorally speaking, I'm a behavioral scientist at the end of the day. I ended with that role, and most of the behaviors that I have noticed, whether it's negotiations related, whether it's, trying to find the weakness within people or strengths within people for my teams that I build around the world for the different, infrastructure, whether they're building science laboratories, whether they're building hospitals, infrastructure. So I used to lead these teams in finding out, the culture, what is it, what are the pressure points, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and how do we work the best way in the best manner. And every single time I found, behavior definitely influenced the physical.
Did your management recognize this and
Yes.
act upon it? Oh,
Exactly, yeah, they did. They, in the end, they finally recognized, and the whole department actually was created because they were convinced and saw the worth and the value.
And is that why they promoted you also?
Yes.
Very interesting observation that she has shared. You see, in the conventional physics, we are given this impression, and the whole impression goes all the way through science, because all is supposed to be extension of matter, that it is objective. And it doesn't matter what you think, what you believe, if you do it the same way, you will get the same result. What she is telling us is that's not how it is. And even that's not how it is in physical matter when you enter quantum physics, which is what quantum physics tells you. Your state of mind, your expectation is affecting the outcome. But even more pronounced when you're dealing with life forms. CDC is all about life, isn't it? And behavioral science is all about life. And there, the attitude of the scientist, the state of consciousness, of thought, and you may not say a word to everyone, but just the fact that you're disturbed and distressed, the results of your experiments are inconsistent. She's then extending this observation now to negotiation and interpersonal relationships and outcomes of conflicts. That when your mind is aligned and calm and in harmony, the outcomes of those efforts of conflicts are also equally effective, or they are chaotic to represent the chaos within you. And as a consequence, the management actually rebuilds the entire hierarchy of the team structure based on these characteristics of mind, state of consciousness, and calm of mind. And if this is the case with elite institutions like this, then you have to understand this is going to be the future. People will hire you because you have a calm mind, clear mind, and would not want you if you're restless, disturbed, chaotic, and internally conflicted, isn't it?
Yes, correct. And many other now, government institutions are now implementing behavioral science departments because of this, because they see the value. Yeah.
You want to continue some of your further work in this space with the next company that you worked with?
Well,
that you work with?
There are some companies in between that I worked also, but I can't mention their
That's
names.
fine. But the results or your observations of
Yes.
experiments?
So the results of the observations, yes. There's some things, like let's say some of the behaviors also affected the physical aspects of people that I've seen. And again, experiments were done on that because of this department that was created. And physically speaking, some of the behavior like anger, certain emotions we had measured, anger, sadness, depression, happiness, people that are positive versus negative, those kinds of, cognitive behavioral type differences.
Was this also linked with creativity?
Yes. Those were secondary outcomes, but we did look at creativity as well. And creativity definitely was, associated with, calmness and peace.
So did you institute programs to teach people to become more calm?
Yes.
Can you elaborate?
Yes. So there were then training programs and certain seminars and things were then conducted. And a lot of people did not buy in at first, but then eventually people started seeing the value in it and the worth, and they started seeing their teams actually, their output being so much more satisfactory. So as a result, a lot more training programs as such were implemented where the core values actually were used.
So the core values she is referring to are the names of the psychological qualities which are part of the 12 petals of the mother's symbol. Those are the core values she is referring to.
Yes. Such as sincerity, gratitude, all of that. So yeah, those core values were...
So did you design the program with those core values?
Yes, I did.
Can you elaborate?
Of course, with other experts, I wasn't the only one, but we had a team of people. The core values were, of course, the basis, the foundation. And those team of people came up with seminars, booklets, workshops, interactive sessions, as well as, of course, implementing it out there in the world as projects. And they were given, assignment saying, wherever you would like to implement it, and then bring us back that example.
And they measured the performance in the company?
Yes.
Improvements?
And there were, there was a quantitative and a qualitative scale, which they would have to measure, and, a numerical value was given.
How much? You can share that?
Yes. So, of course, there was a significant association with those that implemented the core values, having a lot more qualitative and quantitative aspects of positive behavioral change, physical, positive change, health got better. There were 20 or 30 health, outcomes that we were looking at. So eyesight to of course, weight, BMI, body mass index. So things like that. And mental health, there were psychological aspects that were measured. So all of those things positively associated with implementing the core values and behavioral changes that are positive.
So I'm going to turn this around and say, if one of the world's largest defense companies is taking the core values from the mother symbol, validating, implementing through programs even against skepticism, and the skepticism is then overturned by the results they're seeing, improvements in quality of work, quantity of work, health, behavior, interactions, in every way, 40 parameters, yes. All of them seeing an improvement dramatically, that such a company at a global scale invests money to spread the mother symbol into their framework of management improvement. You can see the implications that this must have potentially for humanity. We are not giving enough value to the knowledge that we have received in the yoga traditions, in our spiritual and psychological training programs that we have had from our ancient times, in the knowledge shared with us of the yoga. We're not giving enough importance of the practical results, but the defense research companies, which is interested in their profitability and success in the market, is recognizing the value.
Yes. And they saw monetary, the bottom line go up.
Profits shoot up.
Profits, yeah.
So here's an interesting observation I want to correlate this with. I mentioned the research which was done on the cells with the healers' help by the DRF Dabur Research Foundation. When the healers wanted to do this work, they put one condition for the laboratory staff. They said, we have only one requirement. The people who do those experiments with the healing energies should not be negative and against it. They can be neutral, but they should not be negative. And you can understand the importance of that now in view of what she's discussed. Because in fact, when you are against something emotionally or in thought, even if you don't show it in your behavior, it changes the outcome of the life processes of the objects that you're handling. And especially when you're dealing with cellular growth and health, healing in the medical sphere, if a doctor is upset and angry, the effect on the patients, even though the same medicine is given, would be entirely different. These would be implications of this research.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to share anything in relation to your work?
I think. So there are some investigations which are done in our lab to understand how these mental, the process, how these are the mental behavior are affecting the physiological changes. And what we observed, we have done one study in Antarctica. One of our researcher went to Antarctica along with the expeditioner. Every year DRDO, they are sending a group of scientists to Antarctica. And so one group of people, and in Antarctica problem is the extreme condition are affecting a lot of behavioral problem, psychological problem, and a lot of problems at their physical level. So one group of people, they performed yoga practice, and another group of people, they did not perform yoga practice. And what we observe, there are differences in their psychological behavior, their appetite, their mental health, the depression, the mood swing was very much high, those who are never practiced or those who did not go for the yoga practice. Whereas those who performed yoga practice, their mental stability was good, and that is creating an impact on their physiology. What we observe, there are some specific genes which got expressed in extreme condition, like a thermoregulator gene got expressed in extreme condition, which was never expressed in normal conditions or in the normal scenario. But those genes which are regulating the temperature, and why it is got changed? Because of the mental stability was very much high. We observe their mood swing was very less. They could able to maintain any kind of task successfully without getting disturbed. That's what, because of the lack of oxygen, so many problems are happening. Similar study we have done on Gayatri Mantra chanting. When children are having a pure intellect, I would say, I have a 5-year-old kid who could able to remember 700 slokas of Bhagavad Gita. I don't know how, I never could able to remember those slokas. But because these kids doesn't have two conditions of mind, they are always in a pure intellect. When you train them, these children, with the with initial age, at the age of 3, 4, 5, they could able to grasp as quickly as possible. Within 1 or 2 sessions, they could able to remember the entire chapter. That kind of potentials these children are having. But because of the technological development, and kids are very much exposed to technology, the efficiency, the potentials of brain is going to be in some, and is getting decreased or deprived. And because of this, the changes are happening in their entire brain functions, entire behavior. And if you look at last few years, sir, I think the mental conditions are very much in alarming condition for these children. So I think we have to correct somewhere by inculcating some kind of spiritual knowledge, some kind of yogic knowledge to these children to give them a right direction. So that's, I think it's a very much requirement.
So here's again a fascinating observation, which is through laboratory research of the genetics. People who are exposed to extreme stress of environment, normally your body is pushed to its limit, and you say, that's it, I can't go further. But what he has pointed out, those who were doing the yogasana practices actually underwent a change in the gene activation, which changed the body's capacity to handle those extreme states. Now, this is something extremely important. Those who are not doing the asanas and pranayam are not having that activation. Those who are doing it are having it. Now we're coming to something very important, which is the current edge of genetic research. So far, the idea was you are what your genes are. Your genes is like a fixed template, a program. You can't change it, you can't code it. You can't change the coding. Increasingly now, the viewpoint is changing. It's not the genetics, that's just the starting point. It's the epigenetics. It's the activation, deactivation, and the response with interaction with environment, which is the key. Absolutely. And here's the great insight he's giving us, that if you actually go through a conscious process of change of consciousness, yoga, then you are changing your epigenetics, changing how your genes respond. You can transcend your genetic limitations. That's what your research has shown us.
Absolutely, sir. That's correct. That's
this
what we have
needs to
observed.
be drilled out, pushed out there very hard. Children need to be taught this. Biology needs to be restated in these terms to our children. We are not hard-coded. We are able to change ourselves, evolve consciously. That's the implication. And since you linked it to the students, I want to share one example. This was a research done, I think it was in Gujarat University. It was some 20 years ago. I don't recall exactly where. But what they did was they took a group of students and compelled them to do 1 hour of asanas and pranayam every morning. The other group was let free. Now, naturally, as children, the other group said, hey, we are free. You are the ones who are being forced. Haha. We are at an advantage. We are having fun. After 3 months, the performance between these two groups began to change so radically. The people who were doing their yogasanas and pranayam every morning for 1 hour began to have an improved performance because they had improved concentration, improved grasping power, improved memory, improved creativity. 6 months down, they were so much better than the other group that the other group began to complain, you are partial to them, you should teach us yogasanas also. You see the difference? The evidence speaks for itself, and these are not small changes. It's not a 5 or 10% variation that you can gloss over as subjective. These are so obvious that the students wanted it. And we're seeing the same knowledge or the same principle extended into the business sphere in some of the most competitive and demanding industries. And so this is very interesting observations from both of them. I would like to open the space to any questions if someone has. We have just enough time for taking 2 questions. Yes. Raghu.
This is especially because you're talking about behavioral. Yeah, because you're talking about behavioral change. Yeah. There's a lot of work done, I'm sure you know, by Claire Graves, by a person called Claire Graves in the University of Washington, where he talks about not just the values as I understand them, but worldview. And he talks about the difference between competitive worldviews, collaborative worldviews, and spiritual worldviews. Okay, there are several in between things. This is the 7th level. The performance of people whose worldviews is what we call holonic, more like a cell in the body, outperform others by 3 or 4 times. So it's not just asana and pranayama, but a whole set of what is my fundamental definition of the cosmos, of the world, of myself, and several things. Have you observed anything similar to this in your work, or is it only, because sincerity and all that, you can be a highly sincere, extremely competitive chap. You can be extremely clannish and be very sincere about being clannish and extremely friendly and all of these things.
Yes. So you're asking, so your question is basically, have I observed whether, people's interpretation may be different, right? So yes, obviously, like some people may think, oh, I'm so sincere and I'm so humble, but in reality, they're not. And they may not be, as humble or as sincere or as, whichever the aspect or core value they may think that they are. But as a result, they'll also find that the success rate is not associated as, as well either. And they keep thinking, well, the core value system doesn't work for me. No, it's not that. It's just your interpretation may be a little distorted. As a result, you think that you're implementing, you may believe it, but to implement is something different. To be it is something different. And so, yes, I've definitely, noticed that.
And I suppose implied in your program for training them is also reshaping their worldview.
Yes.
Is that being done consciously?
Yes, that's being done. Well, eventually the consciousness rises, and people do realize and understand something that they're doing. They may need to redefine or change or modify, and then when they do, they see the value in it, and they're like, "Oh, okay, now, aha,"
Any other questions? Yes, please. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Oh no.
Go on. I'll repeat it. Don't worry. Just repeat. Just go on.
So, let me play devil's advocate and say that we have been evolving in this planet with all the influences of the celestial bodies around. So, purely through physical reductionist by a helmet, they could have, okay, I think everybody can hear it. So they could have these experiences. So, and then there is a whole body of study, the so-called neurotheology, and Andrew Newberg and others, where there are very strong neural correlates to the meditative experiences. Now, again, I understand correlation is not causation. Nevertheless, how do you explain this? And don't you think that when you tell brain and mind are entirely separate, we are falling into a kind of a dualism? Thank you.
Okay. I think a lot of these would be addressed to the observations of Arnaud Delorme's presentation. And since he's not here, I might venture probably an approximate response to you. One of the things which was very specific to Arnaud's presentation was that the medium, so-called medium, is able to access very specific, precise knowledge. And that shows access to something very distinctly different and not merely a guesswork coming from your own subjectivity. And that straight away separates it from any emergent phenomenon. And when we speak of brain and mind as different, yes, of course they're different, but they're also connected. Because right here and now within your brain, your thought process is creating ripples in the electrical processes of the brain cells. Equally, if you trigger the brain cells, it triggers changes in your thought as well as your moods. So there's a two-way connection in between. So while they're different, there's still a continuum of reality and of substance even, and of processes, interlinkages. This is not understood. In fact, Arnaud was very clear when he observed that the exact mechanism is unknown. All of these paranormal researchers will always say, these are our observations, the exact mechanism is unknown, meaning we don't know what's linking these ranges of consciousness and the material processes that we are observing. This requires actually for us to build tools which are not reductionist to matter. So now in answer to you, we can always reduce ourselves to matter by saying, my tools can only see matter, therefore everything else is invisible and therefore unreal. Or we evolve the tools. If you told somebody 500 years ago there's such a thing as a magnetic field, he would say that's your imagination. I cannot see it, I cannot smell it or taste it. But we created tools to detect magnetic fields. Similarly, we have created tools to detect the aura, or what we call the aura, using Kirlian photography and now other means also. So our capacity to perceive these directly by objectivized means or new tools itself is growing. And that is validating the fact that in fact such things do exist and there are realities beyond which are quite independent, but always interlinked and dependent upon each other, influencing each other. I think that's all we have. You want to comment on something?
It's correctly you mentioned that our tools which we are utilizing for understanding the concept of meditation or consciousness are only measuring the physical identity of the any kind of movement which is happening at the brain level, whether it is neuron, cell, genes, all are having a physical movement. I think still we are not in the stage to understand the subtle field. Now we are talking about random event generator, which is measuring the conscious field, but still we need a lot of replication of the studies, or we need to do a lot of studies on repeated basis to understand more phenomena. So I think still we don't have evidences, or we don't have instrument to measure that identity. Yeah.
One last question. Yes.
Thank you so much. The subjectivity and the objectivity, that's quite interesting. And I would say that sometimes our talks can go to the extremes of subjective. So the attitude of the person's thinking, attitude can change the result. If this is a case, partly it's a joke, partly it's a reality. The question is that, do you think that depending on the attitude of your thought, that the whole quantum mechanics theory can be changed? This is my question. Partly joke is partly a reality.
Does anyone want to answer? Quantum mechanics, attitude in a change? Okay. When we say someone has a certain attitude and it's influencing an outcome, again, the scientists will say exact mechanism unknown. How is attitude affecting this? But increasingly, there's a vocabulary which is being used, and particularly the Consciousness Healing Initiative in the United States, CHI, they have brought this vocabulary of what they call the energy field, isn't it? Biofield, sorry, the biofield. And the vocabulary gives you a first sense that biofield, you have a biology, but which has a field which extends beyond the biology, which is an expression of the biology, but at the same time modifies the biology. But as a field, it is elastic, it's plastic, it can interact even at a distance. And so we are coming to a recognition that we are more than the body. There is this other thing which is actually substantial. Like a magnetic field, it has its own substantiality and reality. It has its own processes and interactions. And we can interact on your biofield meeting by biofield without my body being aware of your body, right? So in the yoga tradition, we have a more complex concept, where we speak of the body, gross body, which is the Annamaya sheath, kosha, the Pranamaya life force, which is made of life energy proper, which is a substance in itself, and the mind substance, Manomaya, which is also substantial in itself. And all three are embedded and linked into each other. So the biofield would include both the prana as well as the mana as substantiality. So the state, when we say your mind state, your attitude state, is a state of those things in those fields, which has an impact on this, but also action here impacts that. And so we have a viable mechanism. It's okay, just repeat. I'll repeat the question.
I'm not rejecting the subjectivity. Subjectivity is there, and also the objective, for example, mathematics is a pure objective. We can't change the mathematics through your subjective attitude. So the balance must be acknowledged. This is my point. Thank you.
Thank you. In the nature of the experience which is being explored increasingly in this space, and which is going to be the cutting edge of the future of all consciousness exploration, we are ourselves the subject that we objectify. And this, again, can go very far. Your mind can observe itself, your mind can observe your emotions and so on. But there'll come another frontier, which already the yoga tradition experience, the spiritual experience points to, where there's no more subject and object distinction even within yourself. You are what you are, you cannot separate anymore, and that opens to an intuitive and higher ranges of consciousness. And to be able to explore those, well, you can describe your experience, someone else can describe it and recognize by resonance, ah, yes, he has what I had. But beyond that, you cannot objectify beyond a limit. And this also is the great truth of many of our spiritual and religious traditions' speech, that the higher ranges are beyond objectification. So it's good to use objectivity where relevant, but we should also know where we should be able to recognize its limitations and get to a true subjectivity as distinct from a false subjectivism, which is what Sri Aurobindo spoke of. If you stop halfway, you are in that intermediate zone. If you go all the way into the truth of the experience in itself, that is where you open to the spiritual age and the new civilization and the new consciousness that we are all aspiring for. I think with this note, we will have to close. Many of you have questions. Please do meet the speakers.
One question,
after.
last. Can I? See, has there any research been made on Kundalini and mind? Because many people, Kundalini is inactive. Once Kundalini is activated, all these things are answered, I believe. Anything on that?
So there are a number of studies done earlier on Kundalini awakening. And people have done, recently we are writing a chapter on Kundalini awakening, mystical experiences, how can be objectively quantified. But it's not possible to quantify because the people who are having such kind of experience are very less. So we cannot objectively quantify, but there are self-reported studies where we have seen the changes which are happening in the people when their Kundalini is awakening. So we have seen in the long-term meditators, those who are completely into the out-of-body experiences, we have observed there are some kind of changes at the physiological level, but it's still, it is debatable, not very much conclusive. So I think it's not possible to explain about the Kundalini awakening and the changes which are happening at the physical level. It's very difficult. Which is given
so we'll have to be respectful of the next session, and I would want to thank Arnaud Delorme, Dr. Deepeshwar, and Seema Rama for sharing with us fascinating aspects of their research. We hope to hear more from you next time, that we will have this kind of a gathering.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for moderating that session. And I guess it only just says that the beginning can only be a beginning, and we will never really know in entirety. Anything and everything shared, discovered will only add to the endless stream of the knowing becoming the wisdom, and the wisdom at some point in time knowing something more, or silence. So we'll take a small break right now. We step out for a walk. There is lemon juice, herbal tea, and some sundal. Again, it's just a 15-minute break just to move our body, shake it out, and we come back for the last session of today, which promises to be what the session is called as redefining reality. So, inviting you to just go on for a break. It's 3:37. We will be back at 55. Good. Welcome back. Closing your eyes and just inhaling,
and
exhaling out completely from your belly,
सिचुएशंस को अवॉइड करना ट्रिकी हो जाता है लेकिन
inviting you to come into the present and stilling ourselves into this very moment, connecting with your breath. I understand it's a tiring day, it's the last session, and I promise you it's going to be the most fascinating session. So I'm just going to invite you to just take one more breath, closing your eyes, and allow your body to just settle. Allow your mind to settle down. And just listening to the pause and the silence in the room. And allow the silence to connect. All those who are moving, I'm requesting you to please take a sit and just settle down. Thank you. One more long breath. Inhale, and as you exhale, let's just chant Om together. One more breath in. Big, long, deep breath, and as you exhale, for the last time, a big breath in again. And into this moment, which we will now, the last session of today's first day, redefining reality. What we perceive is not what is. So what is time? What is space? Is there even an objective reality? Long accepted principles of physics are now being challenged by the mainstream science. Is science catching up to what adepts have long known? The acknowledgement that consciousness creates matter and not the other way around, and that we exist in a multidimensional universe will radically alter humanity's worldview with evolutionary implications. Are we approaching that breakthrough moment? So I'm going to be inviting, this is a dialogue, and at the same time, it's a dialogue between all of us. If I were to take in from all the sessions, this is an energetic field, right? So we're going to be engaging in this dialogue. But this dialogue is between Geshe Larampa Dorji Damdol, is the director of the Tibet House, Delhi, and has just flown in for this session. So, Geshe-ji. And then inviting Venerable Bhante Buddharikata, the founder of the Uganda Buddhist Center in Uganda. Yeah, I like that, the silent one. Just clap. Yeah, thank you. And this session has been is moderated by Raghu Anantanarayan, and I will let him speak.
Thank you, Sudha. Now, this has become an extremely important question because the latest physics Nobel Prize has been given to questions of space and time. And forever, I think human beings have been asking questions about space and time. So we have discussions about it in the Upanishads, we have discussions about it in the Vedic writing, we have several references about space and time in the yoga tradition, Yoga Sutras in particular. So it would be very interesting to understand from the two of you what you think about space and time, and all the questions. I'll read them out again. And also particularly, why would somebody in a spiritual path need to understand space and time? Why has there been so much of interest in it? Because all the old texts talk about it, examining matter and so on. Yeah, so we'll start with the first three questions. Yeah. What is time, what is space, and what is matter? So we'd like to have your...
Thank you very much. Yes, I'll talk from Theravada Buddhist point of view. Time. Yes, time is a concept which depends on functions of different conditioned things. And Buddha had a way of measuring it into what we call kalpa, eons. It talked about the measurement of time, which is a long time, a kalpa or kappa. It talked about if a mountain is 14 miles high and you want to erode it with a smooth cloth, once in 100 years, you keep on brushing that smooth cloth, that mountain will be eroded. It will be eroded before the kalpa finishes. So the Buddha knew how time is very, very important, and he kind of gave his teaching and talks about people who get these stages of dhyana or jhana. They will live this kind of time and this time. But beyond that measurement of really eons, Buddha talked about present time, future time, and past time. And the reason why he was talking about that is to practice meditation, to not get lost in the past and the future, and bring your mind to the present moment, because that's all there is. That's all there is, you know. So now we understand that we need time as meditators to really know that when you're going to meditate. We look at time. Yes, but that's not so important. You can meditate looking at the sun and know that it's afternoon or night or what. But really, it talks about this what to call the 5 aggregates: body, feelings, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. Those are the 5. 5 aggregates, or skanda, or we call it khandas. And it talks about the way we should meditate. Looking at these 5 aggregates based on the past, your past 5 aggregates before, and your present 5 aggregates, and the future That means the present 5 aggregates, if you're not awakened, you are clinging to them. You are clinging to them in the present moment. You need to know at the present moment, you are clinging onto them. And how are you going to practice meditation so that in the future, you'd get only 5 aggregates, not 5 aggregates subject clinging, but the 5 aggregates. And that's a person who's awakened, he has 5 aggregates or she has 5 aggregates. So we look at that time of past, present, and future in the case of connected to the 5 aggregates. And in the same vein, he advised his son called Lahura to practice meditation on what we call mata. Mata, the Pali word is rupa, which means disintegrating. So when we practice spirituality, we look at matter in 5 elements. One is form, what's called earth element, which has the property of hardness and softness. So we use it for meditation purposes. So we need to know that this is matter, Other than what's matter, never mind. What's mind, no matter. No, we don't stop there. We really look at for the purpose of meditation, and then we really analyze it in for the 5 elements, and then see how those fit together. So we break it apart and see how we fit them together. So now, as we meditate, we become aware of hardness. As I'm touching on this mic, I become aware of hardness and softness. That's the property of earth element. And then we want to put together into what the Buddha called universal characteristics of existence. What are the 3 marks of the existence? Every conditioned thing is impermanent. So we get to know that matter, which is the earth element, is impermanent. And also we need to know that the Pali word is anicca. And then we need to know it's unsatisfactory, dukkha, and also we need to know that it's impersonal, anatta, like that. So really it's very, very important to know matter because we practice meditation in order to attain awakening. Now, when it comes to, of course, we have fire element, that's hotness and coolness. And then we have water element, fluidity and cohesiveness. And then we have air element, expansion and contraction. So as we breathe, in Buddhism, when we practice meditation, we really become aware of our breath, breathing in, breathing out. So we just don't focus on breathing in and breathe out. We are not balloons putting in air and going out. No. We as meditators, we need to know that this is air element has a property of expansion and contraction. And then we become aware, this is contraction. As you breathe in, it is contraction of the abdomen, expansion of the abdomen. But that's not enough. We become aware of the impermanent nature of that experience. Now also space. The Buddha really recommends. Buddha knew about space. He talks about this space in atmosphere. He talks about the space within the body. We have space inside. So space is an element. It's part of the element. So he advised his son, Rahura, that meditate like space. So that when you experience unpleasant and pleasant sensations or sensual impressions, then they will not take hold of your mind because space is not anywhere. It's just everywhere. So he recommended his son to meditate like space. So now in that discourse, we found out Buddha talking about matter, present, past, and future. We'd found him talk about space, to meditate like space. And also we found out talk about the matter as the element. So that's the reason why a meditator should be concerned about space and matter and also time. We use them as fertile soil for attaining awakening. And from a Buddhist point of view, a person who's fully awake, he has gone beyond time and space. So in other words, a person who has attained enlightenment has transcending time and space. So he has reached that place which we call Nibbana, the unborn, uncreated, and all that, which has no time. Time is a function of us to live in a relative world and function very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. First of all, for Aurobindo Foundation, thank you. Tina and Jayantiji, and all the administrators, and all the people who made this possible. This is my third time here in Aurobindo. The first time with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. That was back in 2008 or something. And the second time was, I think, about 1 year before the COVID. I came here to give a 1 week workshop on psychology. So the question is about the time, matter, and space. And the question is also, so what makes a spiritual person to delve into these matters, these things? So what I would say is that, first of all, before we speak about you're a spiritual person, you're not a spiritual person, it's just forget about all these things. And what do you want? So some people, they prefer not to be spiritual. They think that this will give me happiness. Some people think that I should be spiritual, this will give me happiness. Some people think that I should become a bureaucrat, this will make me happy. Some people think that I should become a politician, this will make me happy. Some people, no, I should be an adventurer. Just adventure, this will make me happy. So in short, we begin by saying that everybody seeks happiness. Everybody wants to stay away from COVID. This is reality. Whether you're spiritual, not spiritual, this is reality. The next question is what degree of fear, what degree of unhappiness you want to stay away from? What degree of happiness that you want to see? This is the next question. If I ask this question, male, female, there's no difference. Spiritual, not spiritual, no difference. Even spiritual people, they don't want COVID-19. So this is reality. So with this in the mind, if I ask this question, we'll all agree that we all want to stay away from misery, even if it is a tiny misery. I don't want to have this misery. Even if it's a tiny happiness, I like to have it. This is what we all seek. This is reality. The next question. If this is the reality, this is your aspiration, whether be fulfilled, not fulfilled, this is the next question. So, can this be fulfilled? Some will say that no, it's not possible. Charles Darwin's evolutionary theory. Charles Darwin said that no, that's not possible because you have these basic emotions, attachment, anger, fear. These are the instincts. 2008, when I was sent by the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama to work on his book, which was co-authored by Professor Paul Ekman, a world-renowned psychologist, to see that His Holiness' words are well reflected in the book. So I was there with him for 5 days. And the 5 evenings, he entertained me so well. And one evening was meeting with his psychologist colleagues. And he asked me to introduce myself and talk a little bit about what I do. So I explained a little bit about Buddhist psychology, where all your negative thoughts can be curtailed. And one psychologist raised her hand and said that this is impossible. Attachment, anger, fear, these are the instincts. You cannot get rid of them, number one. If ever you think of getting rid of them, you will not survive. Survival of the fittest. So this is what they said. So the question is whether or not we can accomplish this. Don't start with the quotation from the Buddha's teachings, Vedas, or any source. Ask yourself, what do you want? Is it true that you want to get away from all the miseries, to have the maximum happiness? If the answer is yes, second question, is it possible? So some people say, like Charles Darwin, no, it's not possible. Because the moment the anger is there, you are not happy. Because every moment, the morning you wake up, nobody is waking up saying that today I'm so excited, I'll have anger. No one. Which means that everybody acknowledges that anger means there's unhappiness there. Nobody wants that unhappiness. So, with this question is that whether or not we can attain that. So So people diverge in their views. Some say that it's not attainable at all. Some say that it is attainable. Some say, I don't know. So we should start with a very objective approach. So therefore, I personally, if you ask me what is my background, since till class 12, till I was age 18, 19, I did my physics, chemistry, biology, all these. And then at class 12, I was thinking of becoming physicist. And then I dropped and moved to philosophy. So these are the basic questions. With this in mind, we have to begin with the reality that we live in. We talk about the philosophy all the time, and finally we go to have lunch. Lunch is a very simple matter. It's a reality. We have to surrender to lunch. And if your salary cuts down to 5 rupees down, you will, human rights, right? So we don't relate to the reality. We talk of something else, and we keep the realities different. We have to live with the reality, talk of a philosophy, something different. So the philosophy, by no means, the philosophy is good, is amazing philosophy if it relates with the reality. So therefore, why should a spiritual person delve into the concept of space, time, and matter? This question. So for this, the point is that they say we all seek happiness. We don't want suffering. So whether or not this is attainable, don't believe in somebody. Make sure that what you learn from somebody, you are convinced. If you're not convinced, there's no point. It's just waste of time. So therefore, the point is that whether you're happy, not happy, is entirely, first thing that you have to acknowledge is that whether you're happy, not happy is entirely related to your mind. Some people, the moment they come to this hall, wow, it's amazingly beautiful, so aesthetically beautiful. And some will say that, no, it's so dull, right? So some people, when they see these fans, at the time, when they encountered with a very tragic situation, the moment they see the fans moving, it gives a trauma in their mind. For some people, when they see the fans moving, it's so beautiful because the first time they say the job promotion was announced, he got this news when he saw the fan moving. Every time he sees the fan moving, it's so tender, so beautiful. So basically, things are there, don't reject them. They are reality, right? If you think that these are not reality, first just see how your mind works. Say, cut down your breakfast and see how your mind reacts. Because there's no way. Then you will fight, So what I'm saying is we should be very realistic. So the thing is that the first thing that we realize is that all these, the joy, the happiness that I'm seeking, miseries that I'm the thing of the curbing. So these are all related to my mind. It's happening inside. It is like the screen, huge screen here. Actually, what's happening is happening in the tiny chips there. Tiny chips. What is happening in the tiny chips, that is reflected in the huge screen, on the huge screen. Likewise, what is happening within your, I like this, I don't want this, I want a big house, I want a big car. All these things are a reflection of what is happening in your mind. Now the question is, those people who explore the mind, they're wise. Those people who purely explore the external, they're unwise. Why? Because exploring the external all the time, simply by exploring the external all the time, you will never get what you're seeking. The infinite happiness and the total fearlessness. So, if you look at inside, you'll see that, for example, say you are totally traumatized for whatever reason. Suddenly come to Aurobindo and see that people are so peaceful, calm, and instantly there's a calmness coming in your mind. So whereas there's so much of joy, and suddenly you meet somebody who you dislike, instantly your mind is disturbed. The person is not doing anything. The person is not doing anything. Simply something is happening inside your mind. So here, your mind behaves in a disturbed way or in a calm way, depending on what you interact, what kind of object with which you interact. So this object with which your mind interacts is consisted of space, and time. Space and time. And in space, then you talk about the matter. So matter is related to the space, and the time is the flow of the matter in space. So this is what it is. So now, because that your mind behaves very differently because of the encounter with the object, and the object is made of time, space, and matter. So to know what it is, the reality of this, what I'm saying, is this a reality or this reality beyond? This is why the study of the philosophy came into being, and today quantum mechanics, relativity theory, they are all there to revolutionize our perception of the object. Then the next one is the psychology. Why do we need the psychology? Because all these things, what is really happening, object per se is there, and the object and the mind interacts. These two interact, and then a certain emotions arise within you. Disturbance arises within you, or peace of mind arises within you. So this, because the interplay of this, and the interplay is not happening somewhere in between. Interplay is happening within your mind. So you have to know this mind so well. So here, neuroscience and psychology comes into play. So therefore, in Buddhism, there's a tremendous emphasis on the study of philosophy and the study of the psychology, for the reason that all our mental states of peace, unhappiness, sadness, trauma, depression, anxiety, they're all related to your mind when it interacts with the object. So therefore, these things is so important. Next question is, what is that reality beyond what we perceive? This next question. This is a very serious question, and because we don't have much time, I simply like to give you a quick idea. For example, let's say a glass of water. I ask you what it is. Most people will say that this is water, and physicists will say that this is electrons, protons, neutrons. And who's correct? And you will say that both are correct. But when you see there's water, particularly under scorching sun, when you see there's water, you feel like drinking it. If you see there's a bunch of electrons, protons, neutrons, you don't feel like drinking it. Your emotional reaction to the object is very different. So therefore, the point is that, say, where is this water that I visibly see as water? Where is it? When you go into the element particle level, it's no more there to be seen. So then, with respect to all your emotional states related to the water, simply subsides. You don't have to believe in it, it automatically happens. Because somebody who you dislike, the person nearby you, you feel so disturbed. The moment the person leaves, your mind feels so peaceful. So, likewise, anything related to the water, the moment you see that on the atomic level, the water disappears, you see that anything related to the water dissolves, related to your emotions dissolve, and your mind feels total calmness with respect to the water. Likewise, with any phenomena, you see that they don't exist objectively, it's simply coming like a dream. Say, when you go into the dream, you see things are so real. And say a tiger is chasing you. There's so much of fear. So this tiger is chasing you, you're perceiving it. You're perceiving it as real. That is your ignorance. And the outcome is the fear. The moment you wake up, the moment the tiger pounces on you, and you say, oh, now I'm dead. And your mother wakes you up. You feel, wow, I'm so relieved. It's not real. The moment you see that's not real, that is a discovery of the reality. That is wisdom. With the wisdom, the outcome is the fear dissolves. So the point is, cultivate the wisdom. Wake up from the sleep of ignorance, pretending all the objects of the study of the philosophy and all related to your psychology. Just wake up from the sleep of ignorance by knowing thoroughly the philosophy, knowing thoroughly the psychology. Thank you.
Can we go into this just a little bit more? Yeah. There are a couple of things that, it would be nice for us to hear a little more about. One is time actual or is it psychological? So you were speaking about the past, the present, and the future. So when I hang on to the past, I create time. When I expect the future, I create time. But if I'm able to be at the here and now, isn't there time involved? And is there a difference between psychological ideas of time and the actuality of time? Right? And you were speaking about something similar in the psychological response to reality or actuality. So is there a difference? So the moment I am able to deal with my psychology, will I be able to see and penetrate into reality much deeper? What happens?
I think that pertains to the first question about what we see. Is what we see real? Yes, or it's not. Well, for me, I can relate to this question. When I look at the moon, as a Buddhist monk, we have to observe the moon. Sometimes it's a quarter moon, sometimes it's a half moon, and then sometimes it's full moon. So the question, does the moon decide to be a half? And then I sometimes say, no, I'm tired of being half moon. Now I'm quarter moon. Or is the moon always full? Do we have really sunrise? Or today I went to meditate over there and there's so beautiful sun. Do we really have sunrise and sunset? What do you think? Do we have sunset? Or do we have sunrise?
It depends on where I'm seeing the sun from.
Do we have a quarter moon? Anywhere in the world?
I love the quarter moon.
What about half moon?
I love the half
What about new moon?
I love
What about full moon? My friends, all these tools, measures, as a human being, we had to invent for our convenience and to live happily, but we know what's the ultimate reality, all right? So you cannot touch time. It's not there. We create it in the mind as a concept to move on our lifetime. I'm not a scientist, I'm just a Buddhist, but that's what I know for sure. Now, this brings us to realities what the Buddha talks about. One is called relative reality. That's a quarter moon thing, half moon. That's what you call relative reality. And it's okay to stay on that level. There's what you call ultimate reality. That's a full moon thing. So we need to handle both because the dance between the two. When we get caught up with one reality, then we are sacrificing the other one on that order. When we get caught up in ultimate truth and we don't see the relative truth, then we get caught up. I have introduced a practice because I'm a meditation teacher. I tell people that people who get caught up in ultimate reality, they're just like sitting inside the house. They don't know what's outside. And people who get caught up in outside reality, I say, okay, they are relative reality. And they get caught up, they don't know what's happening inside. You don't know what time, you don't know whether it's past the future, you don't know whether it's really you can touch it. Now, I've introduced a practice called sitting in a window. Sit in a window practice, whereby you sit in a window. When it's time to look at ultimate reality, you just do like this. When it's time to look at ultimate reality, you just do like this, without movement. It's called sit in a window practice. Is it time to look at time as real? Look like this. Is it time to look at time as relative? You look like this. That's how you're going to survive. Because I've seen people saying when somebody passes away, especially Buddhist, somebody say, oh, my brother passed away, my friend passed away, then they say people get caught up in this reality. Come on, everybody dies. Everything is impermanent. The Buddha talked about impermanence. What do you think? Can your friend really stay alive for the rest of their life? Come on, let's go and enjoy our life. Do you do that when somebody has lost somebody?
No.
But this is a reality. Everybody died, the Buddha died, all these people died. Why would you really bring that teaching of the ultimate reality when a friend has a problem? I remember one nun in Brazil went to Japan to train. And they taught this nun emptiness. Emptiness, emptiness. You know, emptiness, everything's empty, empty. Sunyata, sunyata, sunyata. So then she started going about sunyata, sunyata, sunyata. Then the monk said, what's going on here? Got a boulder, small, throw it on the feet. Is it empty? Is it empty? He said, no, it's painful. So my friend, time, we have to look at what's the ultimate reality of time. And we have to look at the relative reality of time. And then we have a dance between those things are intertwined. So the meditation is, the good thing about meditation, we learn to extract ultimate reality from relative reality. And we don't conflict them. Otherwise, we're in trouble. That's my contribution. So learn how to look at time as a relative reality that, okay, I'm going to have lunch at 6. What? But there's no 6 anywhere. But you can at least have lunch at that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So basically, we see that this is a very interesting question, and particularly if you really want to stay away from all your miseries, then this analysis, this is known as the soteriological purpose. So whatever we explore, there should be a purpose there. And in fact, the physicists, what they're trying to do is they're trying to look for what is known as the unified field theory. To unify the quantum mechanics and the relativity theory. Quantum mechanics talking about the macrocosm, and relativity talking about the macrocosm. But thus far, despite the efforts of many of the physicists, including Albert Einstein, still is not successful. So in Buddhism, I would say, okay, I'm more keen not to mention from Buddhist point of view. From the reality point of view, let's say that, yes, we cannot deny the reality of time. Time exists. Because, say, 30 years ago, I used to be extremely physically, so dynamic, so energetic. And people said, you're not feeling tired. What does it mean by tired? So with COVID-19, the moment we started to get the jab, I realized that time passed. There was a time. I've grown old because with the jab, young people, all those people in time who are transparently young, they got the jab, they suffer for like 3 days. A fever. The body is resisting to the COVID vaccine. But my body, I got a jab and 10 minutes, 3-4 minutes, little bit of fever and paracetamol, finished. My body, every cell of my body surrendered to the vaccine. It's got old, no hope in fighting with the vaccine. But the younger body, they fight. 3 days, they fight. So what I'm saying is that there's time, there's a reality. We cannot deny the reality. Time exists. Yet, interestingly, if you analyze what the time is, say 2022 passed, we want to know what is today. 2024 is yet to come. It's a reality. 2023 is where we live in. 2023, January gone. March yet to come. February. And February today is what? 13th. 12th gone. And 14th yet to come. 13th morning gone. Right? If you go like this, you will never find the time. And this is another reality. So don't be fascinated by one reality. The reality has multiple facets. Let's not forget it. So the mother, a professor mother, right? While being a professor, she also knows that she has to work at home to take care of her children. So don't be too obsessed with the professor's work, with the mother's work. Don't be too obsessed with the mother's work, you have the professor's work. So the reality is multifaceted. You have to know all the realities and then deal with the reality. You are the awakened one. If you just caught up, you're just trapped with one reality. No, where is the time? 2022 is gone. 2024 is yet to come. 23, January gone. March yet to come. And then February 12th is gone. But the 14th is yet to come. And 13 morning gone. If you do like this, you'll never find time. There's another reality. So this is what Venerable Bande Buddharagita is saying, that objectively, nothing to be found as a time. But time does exist. Undeniably it exists. We cannot deny the existence of the time. So where does it exist? If it doesn't exist objectively, how does it exist? It exists subjectively. So this is where, subjectively meaning like a dream. Dream happened. Don't say that dream did not happen. Dream happened, but dream happened not outside. It happened in the dream. So you have to acknowledge that dream is not real, but it did happen. You have to acknowledge it. So by acknowledging it, the soteriological purpose is that your miseries and tensions will dissolve, knowing that these things happened, but things all happen in dream. So knowing that it's all subjective, coming from your mind, your fears dissolve. That is the soteriological purpose of knowing whether or not the time exists in real sense or it's abstract. Thank you.
I'll ask you one more question, and then we'll throw it open to the group. One of the things that's happening is if you go to the YouTube today, there are so many people talking about quantum physics and the mind and what the Buddha said or what some Rinpoche said or some meditator said and all of this, right? And then this whole discussion about consciousness, which we saw, right? And people in the spiritual realm, especially from the Buddhist and the Hindu traditions, have always said that consciousness is the fundamental. So obviously, meditators from this tradition have seen something, right? They've talked about matter at infinitesimal sizes. They've talked about time. And the definition of time that you find in many of these texts is what people accept today, which is the movement of subatomic particles. And they also speak about meditators being able to see these things. So what's the connection between this kind of a description of the world, which most deep meditators have seen, maybe some of them have seen, which is so close to what is being described today in physics? Can you shed some light on that? So they speak about both. You start with him?
If got question, ask him. If got question, ask me.
Okay. You, sir.
I'll talk. You first talk.
Okay. So basically, one thing is that how do we realize cities? What they do, what they see is one thing. And what benefit we get out of this. And this is another thing. Of the two things, that is more important. What benefit we get out of knowing what the cities are doing, what they are seeing. This is so important for us. Sometimes we tend to create a wall. We talk about what the cities experience, and we don't correlate this to our experience. So what we experience is the empirical reality. And what the siddhas, what they experience is a very subtle reality. I don't mean to deny very profound realities experienced by the great siddhas, but the reality is that what benefit we have, we get. So the point is that only we can, first of all, intellectually connect with what we are seeing, with what somebody, when you become realized, you don't talk about the cities somewhere, when you become Mahasiddhas in the future, if you put effort, then potentially what you can see. So you have to connect the two. Only then it will make sense to you. Then it will inspire you. Otherwise, this is what the Maharishis, they saw that. Yeah, this is amazing. And how do you know that? No, I read somewhere. Somebody told me. And how do you know that what that person told you is correct? So if you cannot connect, cannot correlate the two, that is where we can go wrong. So The point is that, say for example, let's say what the chairperson is saying about the great Maharishis. They see the extremely subtle moments of time and subtle particles. Do they see that as 100% true? How? We have to know that in relation to what we can see. What we can see. For example, let's say for us, say when you say time, we can't imagine a time like 1 nanosecond. Spiritually, say 1 year, 2 years. Those of us who are in the 30s, 40s, 50s, you know that time flies. Those who are very little, age 5, 6, 7, 8, they crave to become, older. When you're already, your middle age, 30, 40, you crave to be young, right? So you see the time flies, but the younger ones, they say time does not move at all. This is the discrepancy in the people's perception. So as you see the broader range of the reality, say you, somebody in 40s, okay, let's say anybody who's above 30 plus, resents 30 plus. Okay, say 30 plus, you have 30 years of experience, because of which you see that the 10 years is very short with respect to 30 years. For somebody who's 80 years old, 10 years too long because that person never experienced 10 years. So, for us, and then 40, 30, oh, time moves so fast. 40 time flies. 50s, what is time? It's just like yesterday. You're getting it? Those of us in 50s, I'm 55. Those of us in 50s, we have that experience. It's like yesterday. 10 years is nothing. Okay. So the point is that the broader the reality that you see things as so tiny. And you have a frame of reference. Frame of reference on the basis of which you can think of the time. Small, big. In other words, the broader you see, you have multiple choices. So now, we should not become say, 80 years old boy or a girl who has the mind of a child. What do you mean by that? It means that physically we grow old, but mentally we live with the convention of the world. Just today, 2022 was a disaster, 21 was a disaster, COVID-19. So I just finished, I wish that 2022 finish as soon as possible. So like, say, you get a fresh, youthful 2023. No, you become 1 year older. This is a reality. So now this is what is meant by small child's mind, elderly body. So we should become somebody who is elderly plus mentally very experienced and elderly. How? You should be able to cognitively, we should be able to see things like, okay, what is 1 year? 1 year means 12 months. What is 12 months? 12 months means 1 month means 30 days. What is 1 day? 24 hours. 1 hour, 60 minutes. What is 1 minute? 60 seconds. What is 1 second? 1,000 milliseconds. You go like this. You go like this, and this is reality. You can do it. You may not be defined as the Maharishi. You can do this. You can do this, you think of this more, and then you see that even the walls, they are moving so fast, which otherwise looks so static. You will start to see that they are moving so fast. Even the people around, they are moving so fast. You can see that. It doesn't. So then these people, when they see this, their behaviors will change, their thinking will change, their behaviors will change, and other people will come to respect you, saying that he is a Maharishi, she is a Maharishi. Right? So this is how the Maharishis evolve. So this is how we have to connect what they see and what we can see. Thank you.
So I'll add a little bit. Yes. So what the world is seeing, the scientists, they're seeing atoms and all this kind of thing. The Buddha already saw.
That's right.
Yes, it's just amazing that they're trying to catch up.
Yeah.
They are figuring out these things already, all the Latin beings. Yes, yes. The difference, though, is that the Buddha wanted to see the interdependent arising of the different phenomena, be it matter, the relationship between matter and mind and matter, mind and mind, and matter and matter. He wanted to see those relationships. And not just to see those relationships alone, as it's written somewhere in the scriptures, that when this is, that is. When this is not, that is not. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. So this is called Paticca Samuppada. It's a very, very, very important teaching that maybe scientists may not have it. Yes, for that's very important. Why the Buddha was teaching that? For the purpose of awakening. In other words, his teaching is intended for a particular purpose. And one time he asked the monks, when he was in the forest, he said, monks, what do you think? Here he got leaves in his hand. What do you think? The leaves in the hand here or the leaves in the forest? Oh, the monks say, oh, the leaves in the forest are more than what you're handing, the one you have in the hands. Then he said, so is what I'm teaching you is this much. Suffering, cause of suffering, ultimate happiness, and ultimate happiness. So all his teaching is geared towards that. And he has what you call a mission statement. You think that universities have mission statement? The Buddha had a mission statement. So all his teaching are geared for that. So now to the first noble truth. Those are the 4 pillars of the Buddha's teaching. All the knowledge the Buddha teaches, it fits into that. He said that to understand suffering, that's the first mission. First mission. Then the second mission statement is to abandon the cause of suffering. And the third one is to realize ultimate happiness. And the fourth is to develop your mind to attain ultimate goal. So whether the matter is going to be reduced to subatomic, whatever particles and all the things, it's all good and he had already figured it out. The key is how to connect the points. Yes, the science reconfirms and confirms what we have in spirituality, and the difference, I think, for spirituality goes a little bit for knowing this knowledge to attain moksha, knowing this knowledge to attain liberation. That's the differences. Thank you very much.
Can you talk? Oh, so my question is to all 3 of you. You talked about the physical time as well as the psychological time. Is there really, are you asking actually whether the time, were you asking actually whether the time is really physical or psychological? But there can be a psychological time and there can also be a physical time. Because in the case of psychological time, for example, there is the famous Benjamin Libet experiment where we construct the sequence of events within milliseconds, right? So there is a psychological time. When we come to the physical time, there is a very clear concept of second law of thermodynamics and increasing entropy. So there is a unidirectional time, a very clear physical time in macro universe. At the same time, we also have the very famous quantum eraser experiment or the delayed choice experiment, which shows that the future can actually go and affect the past, right? So what actually is the time that we are here talking about? That is my question number 1. And my second question is, the Venerable Monk talked about Pradida Samutbhava, the dependent causation. Does this framework of dependent causation can be applied to our understanding of time, physical time particularly, at the very basic levels? Then what kind of insights we might get? And the third question I want to ask is, when Anton Sellinger and Dalai Lama, His Highness Holiness Dalai Lama, they both meet, what is it that discuss about time? These are the 3 questions. Thank you.
For me, I just speak what I can relate to very well. Yes, dependent origination, co-rising. It applies to the physical time you're talking about. It applies. This law applies when this arises. This arises. When this stops arising, this also stops arising. When this is not. So it definitely, it arises. I mean, it applies. He didn't use it to apply only on things, because this is about conditioned existence. Everything that's conditioned, this applies. If it's conditioned, if something came due to cause and condition, it will apply. So now time also comes to due to cause and condition. Right? Yes. It's not unconditioned. From a Buddhist point of view, only one thing which is unconditioned is nirvana. Everything is unconditioned. So you can apply this to all things that comes due to cause and condition. Time due to cause and condition. Human mind, in many ways, human mind created it. Even with the other measurements like kilograms and miles and all these things, human beings are amazing. The symbols we have created, the borders, this is Uganda, this is Kenya, this, all these are things created by the mind, human mind. That's why the Buddha say all conditioned things are impermanent. Having arisen, they pass away, and when they pass away, that's peace. So now we are so much hooked to these things, and we don't see beyond that. That one I can answer. And then other question was what?
About the dialogue between the Buddha.
I wasn't there on that dialogue with the Dalai Lama. Please, you can answer.
Okay, the discussion time, this is actually a very interesting topic. In fact, this is what happened in Cambridge University. When I was so keen on physics since my childhood. So after completing my philosophy, and they went to Cambridge and met with the number of physics professors, and I had a great deal of discussion on time with him. And then later on, I think about 2 years ago, during the COVID time, we had the dialogue between Professor the Nicholas Gissen, who is a world Nobel laureate level, renowned physicist, and myself, online, the dialogue on time. If you're interested, it's all available. You can easily get access to that. And this is greatly discussed in Arya Nagarjuna's the philosophy, and many of the Buddhist philosophers, they talk about the time. So this is an extremely important discussion. Yes, of course, time, what time is. We should not forget, yes, as we discussed, that for young people, for small children, the time goes so slow. For the elders, it flies. This is psychological time. Whereas there's a reality, there's a time there, not objective reality, but the time is there. Where, after 30 years, I'd meet my classmates. In those 30 years before, the boys, girls, all my classmates, they have such beautiful complexion. I remember that. And suddenly I saw them after 30 years. I said, are you that person, that boy, that girl? And then they must be seeing me also the same way. There's a reality. We cannot deny these realities. This is a real time. So what counts? What counts is a real time. But given even the real time, if you explore to see if it exists objectively, we'll find that even this does not exist objectively. This, we don't have to believe in it. Anybody, if you can do this analysis, sensibly, you will discover, you'll be fascinated. In fact, the manner in which the Niels Bohr, he said, this is one thing which I'm very interested in what he said. What he said was that if you study quantum mechanics and if you're not shocked by it, you have not understood it yet. Likewise, if you study about time and to see that time is purely psychological, if you study about this, but if you're not shocked by it, you have not understood how the time does not exist objectively. So if you know that time does not exist objectively, then it will have an incredible benefit or impact on your psychological thought processes, cognitive thought processes, affective thought processes, and your, the demeanor, your behavior will change to such a calmness and peace and compassion. Thank you.
Namaste. First of all, thank you for all the insights that we are having. And there are a barrage of questions that are coming. First question, time is based upon reality. This is what I gather. In reality, what we are seeing or what we are observing or what scientists have observed, and of what you are saying, can we consider time to be a barrier? Because say, for example, when we go at the speed of light, the time changes. We have actually seen that time actually changes, it slows down. And we are experiencing it, as Reverend said, that we are experiencing it. When humans were not there, was time not there? And all the immortals, all the sages who have just crossed the limit, we have seen, we have read that they actually surpass time. They're ageless, and maybe they can come back to their shape, and they can be in their shape for like thousands and thousands of years. And so what can we consider time to be a barrier that someone needs to cross physically, subjectively, objectively? Because this is what I'm gathering. And would time not be there when no human is there on the face of earth? And what does Kal Chakra Tantra say about time? 2 questions. Thank you.
Sir, can you make it one question? If I make it one question, can a person go beyond time and come back? That was one extraordinary phenomenon you spoke about, right? Your question had 2 or 3 things. Now, one is relativity. The other is, can I go beyond time and come back, an extraordinary phenomenon? And then you spoke about the reality of time and relativity of time, and in other words, what is the question that they can look at? Yeah? Yes. Is time a barrier? Okay, that's the most important.
It all depends. We talked about relative reality and ultimate reality. So if you are not enlightened, you always be bound by time and space. But once you really attain enlightenment, you are not bound with that time and space, because you are really, of course, if you're enlightened, you have to go and eat. You have to catch your plane at this time. Yeah, it doesn't mean that once you get enlightened, you go to the meetings. If the meeting is at 10, no. So, my friend, if you understand what's a relative reality and ultimate reality, that will answer your question.
I think he's also saying that there are extraordinary stories of people who've gone, come back in time.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's possible. Some people can go and die near death experience, and then they come back. Again, that's relative. Yeah, so it's not a question of whether it's a barrier or not. It's a question.
If you are enlightened, you would know everything. Every single thing that is there. So you will know time. So I don't need to catch a flight.
You can. Yeah, so I think other people from the public there can come, but enlightened person has to live on a relative reality. They don't, because they are enlightened, they cannot attend a meeting by just sending their mind there. They have to go physically there. So, please.
Okay, to know the past and to go to the past, these two are different. To know the past, we know the past. I know when I was 5 years old. I know that so well, but I cannot go back to the past. So in fact, to be very honest, nobody can go back in the past. To be very honest, we should be very realistic. We don't tell stories. You can know the future. You can know the future, but you have to go to the future. You can know the future, but you cannot be there in the future and then come back. No, this is not possible. To be very honest. Right? We should be very realistic. Okay. Then next part is, so therefore, people oftentimes, one time, somebody who's following, yogi tradition, some teacher, I said that, my teacher said that it's so easy to get to sun. The moment you see the sun, you are already there, your mind is already there. No. The knowledge of the sun and your mind being there is very different. For example, I can think of America now, but I'm not in America. My mind is not in America. How do I know that my mind is in America? Is that today, if you ask me, for example, Tina asked me, tell me what my friends do in America, New York, Manhattan. Oh, one of your friends is having the meeting in the UNO office right now with the UNO General Secretary. And she called her, and it's actually happening. That is a proof that my mind is there. But at the moment, I cannot do that. But I know the past, future, but my mind is not there in the past and the future. This should not be mixed up. So people, so this is the one thing. I don't want to go too much into this part. Then the other one is the time you talk about if you travel by the speed of light, you're talking about the time dilation. Albert Einstein's time dilation concept about the twins paradox. So this is, yes. These two are very different. One is macro, one is micro. These two are very different. And for the time dilation, simply because the time dilation exists doesn't mean that the time is psychological time. Because, for example, say, sometimes the food is good, sometimes the food is not good. Doesn't mean that food is psychological food. Sometimes the food is good, it's an elaborate food. Sometimes food is very simple, right? It doesn't mean that the food is psychological. Food is a reality. In the reality, some are simple, some are sophisticated. In time, say where with a particular motion, particular speed, say we move on the speed of the planet Earth around the sun, and the sun around the Milky Way galaxy, in Milky Way galaxy around the whole universe. So according to that time is there. So this time is a reality, but it cannot be found objectively. And wherefore somebody who travels faster than the speed at which we are traveling, for them, then the time dilation can happen. So the time dilation, which means that for us, if it is like 30 years, for that person, it's just 10 minutes. That's possible. But it doesn't mean that it's psychological time. It's still real time. Thank you.
Okay, one little thing I want to add is about in meditation, people can tell their past lives. They can go back and tell their past life in details. There's also regression. There are people who can tell their past lives. There's no doubt about that.
This is the knowledge of the past life.
Yes, knowledge of the past life. Yes. So is that clear? And also, yes, you read the scriptures. People attend jhanas, and the Buddha even talks about, I can tell my past life. And for me, I've seen someone also who can tell their past life. He's in Sri Lanka. When he was 3 years, he was chanting Pali language. And then he was asked, and he said that he lived 1,500 years ago. And I traveled with him. Now he's a monk. That time he came to Bhavana Society, West Virginia. I traveled with him in New York. He became a novice monk. And I went to Sri Lanka. He told me, I was here. This is where I was. So people can really know the past. There's no doubt about it. And there are some people, there are some practices, regression. People, they can tell their past life. There's no problem. So another thing you talk about, you know everything. The Pali word is called sabbanyu, which is a quality which was actually being given to the Buddha, but the Buddha never said like that. He said if you want to know something, he will direct his mind there. And he even ridiculed some of this sect that is called Nagantas. He said that if you knew everything, why did you fall into the ditch? So that's a quality that Buddha never claimed, sabbanyu, omniscience actually. But he knew everything, but when he put his mind there, but knowing what's going in a room and what's going on, that's not what the Buddha was being known for. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hello. Hello. Actually, I have to come up here to. There is, you are from Africa, and this is, I think, this time to introduce this new form of reality for this world. Because actually in Africa we go like that, no? but because we don't really trust the handshake. But actually, we do have a really, 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 really oneness handshake. I cycled all the way from England to South Africa, so I, a lot of friends in Africa. But I want to show you this. See, this is why we don't trust this handshake. Because I'm falling over the edge of a cliff, and he let me go. This is why we don't trust this handshake, because we squeeze it, and it hurt. And I don't want that. This is why we don't trust this handshake. I don't know what that one is. You see that one? I don't really know what that one is. And I don't like that one, though. Then some people pretend that they care. It's like chameleon. That's almost like the worst one. So we got a new form of handshake that actually shows unity. Okay. And that is, close your hand. Close your hand, sir. You see, this is actually unifying Subkamalic Ek, which means Hindi is all is one. So actually I am you, you are me. We are all, then can we be free? And then we can share this reality in this time. You get me? And I am now strong with that. So.
You, sir.
Yeah, you're not getting me. I understand because you haven't done it. So that's the way it is. But it's the right time to show it because therefore we can actually learn a little bit of actually oneness. So thank you for that. And I'll show you just so you know. Okay? And then bless you. And that's thank you very much for your beautifulness. Yeah. But it is also relevant. Don't arrest me. It's a nice time. Thank you so much. Bless you.
Thank you so much.
Do we have time for one final question? He's been waiting for kind of a long time. I've been watching, and this gentleman has been waiting for a very long time.
Two questions, yeah.
The last two questions,
Yeah, there'll be plenty of time. It's not even a question. It's just gratitude. Thank you, guys. Especially about sitting in the doorway or in the windowsill between the absolute and the relative. Nothing more needs to be said. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very enlightening talk. And I think most of us are totally convinced how the notion of time is presented in Buddhist sources and in practitioners' life. Now, my study is on Hindu texts, and there we have a notion of Mahakal and Kala cha Akala cha, no time and time. So time arises out of total absence of any sequence, akrama. So I was wondering whether Buddhist tradition also has something similar, because ultimately you're right that it's all relative, and the ultimate reality cannot be totally linked with what is relative, because it is beyond. And at least in tantric form of meditation, you have states of mantra consciousness that are beyond time, and there are symbols that evoke that. So I was wondering what the notion of noka, akal, whether it is there in Buddhist sources.
Yeah, the Buddha talks about akalika, timeless.
Timeless.
Yes. It's as if we can even divide time like this. I think there's even Dzogchen tradition, divide time like this. There's present, past, future, and timeless. Timeless, we understand it. In fact, the Buddha talks about the timeless Dhamma. That's one of the qualities of Dhamma is akalika, is timeless. All right. So it's not limited by time. It's the truth, So yes, that concept is already in Buddhism. Yes, we have it. Timeless.
Doesn't change.
Yes. It does the Dhamma, the unconditioned. Yes. Yes, we have it, timeless. Yeah, we call it akalika. One of the qualities of Dhamma is akalika. Sanditiko akalika, heipasiko, opanaiko, pachatam veditabo, vinyohiti. These are the 6 qualities of the Dharma. It's timeless. We have it. Yes, thank you very much. Do we have it? Do you have it?
This is a very interesting thing. There are many parallels. Say the timeless, time coming out of timelessness, and then according to quantum mechanics, Big Bang, but although there is a divergence in the view, many of the quantum physicists believe that the time and space came from timeless. What is that timeless? Singularity. From singularity, the time and space came into existence. Of course, the next question is, what exists before that? So before that, there's no time. But a Nobel laureate, Professor Roger Penrose, does not agree with this. There are many physicists, renowned physicists, who does not accept in single Big Bang. So for them, is a multiple Big Bang. Big Bang, Big Crunch, Big Bang, Big Crunch. It's not a single Big Bang. In Buddhist context, for example, let's say that this person being very kind, or let's say in India, you drive on the right lane, you'll be put a penalty. You have to drive on the left lane. So why? It's just pure convention. So in India, the same place, today you are put a penalty. 1,000 years ago, it's totally free. You can drive in both ways. There's no rules, regulations. So this came into existence. It came into existence from no rule to rule, from no time to time. So the ultimate reality, in the ultimate sense, there's no time. And from this timelessness, in the ultimate sense, arose the time of the relativity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. It was quite interactive, quite perceptive, and yes, as the gentleman mentioned, sitting in the window. I think that was a very powerful framework. And the distinction of reality, realistic, and time and timelessness. We can go on and on and on. And thank you so much for today, for day one. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience. We started the day with looking at what's the context, so what is it that is needed to go forward. We dwelled in mind and matter. We went a little bit more deeper to understand mind. And today we looked just now at redefining reality. So tomorrow, the second day, we start at 9:30. And from the head, we enter the heart space. So the 4 sessions is going to be more centric around exploring the space of the heart. What does it mean out over there? So yes, that also is a part of time and space. So thank you so much. And we see you all tomorrow at 9:30. And rest well. And like the monks say over here, sadhu. Thank you. Grateful and good night. One second. I just need 30 seconds with the speakers. There's just a communication that I need to handle with them. So everyone else, thank you for being a wonderful audience, and we look forward to starting another day tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. right here.